She stood by the corner table holding a half-empty glass of water, her name tag barely noticed by anyone passing by. The room buzzed with conversations, suits shaking hands, exchanging cards, laughing at inside jokes about market shares and IPOs. No one paid her much attention. To them, she was just another face, too quiet, too ordinary, too forgettable. They didn't know her name and frankly, most didn't care to ask. Some even glanced at her with a polite smile, then moved on to someone more important. She wasn't dressed in designer labels, didn't carry a flashy title and didn't try to force her way into conversations. But what none of them realized was that she wasn't there to impress, she was there to observe, to listen and to learn. Because sometimes the most powerful people in the room are the ones who say the least. A few feet away, the big players in the tech industry were clustered in groups, boasting about their recent funding rounds and partnerships. They talked over each other, chasing validation. She made mental notes, not just of what was being said, but who was saying it and how. She had studied these rooms long enough to understand that networking wasn't always about talking, but about knowing when to speak, and more importantly, what not to say. One man brushed past her, almost spilling her drink, then chuckled without apology and walked away. That moment stayed with her, not because it was the first time she'd been dismissed, but because it would be the last. Outside, the night air was cool and quiet, a stark contrast to the noise inside. As she waited for her rideshare, her phone lit up with a new message. It was a confirmation. The final investor had come through. Her startup, the one she'd been building silently for years, was now fully funded. She smiled softly. She didn't need their approval. She had something bigger, a plan, a vision, and now, the resources to bring it to life. They didn't remember her name that night, but a year later, they'd be scrambling for meetings with the woman they once ignored, and when her company's logo lit up the financial news under the headline newest female-led Fortune 500 breaks records. Some of those same people would claim they'd always seen her potential. But what happened between that night and her rise to the top? How did she turn rejection into rocket fuel and silence into strategy? The story doesn't just inspire, it reveals what truly sets a leader apart. And it all started the moment she walked out of that room and didn't look back. Want to see how it unfolded from there? Stay tuned for what happens next. Or explore how she built her business empire. For who tried to stop her along the way. Her name was Elena Brooks. She didn't come from money or connections, and she definitely wasn't born into the world of high-rise offices and power lunches. She grew up in a small town where ambition felt more like a fantasy than a roadmap. But even as a kid, she asked questions others didn't. She watched her mother work double shifts just to pay the bills, and each night, Elena would quietly write in her notebook business ideas, sketches of apps, questions she wanted answers to. While other kids dreamed of fame or fortune, Elena dreamed of freedom, of one day building something of her own. Something no one could take from her. Her early years in the city weren't easy. After graduating with a degree she paid for through scholarships and part-time jobs, Elena applied to countless companies. Most never replied. When she did land interviews, she was often overlooked, sometimes patronized. She kept hearing the same phrases, you don't quite fit our culture. We're looking for someone with a bit more polish. She learned to nod, to smile, and to walk away without showing the sting. What they didn't know was that each rejection only sharpened her resolve. She was learning the rules of the game quietly, patiently, and she was building something behind the scenes that no one saw coming. She started her business from a one-bedroom apartment with peeling wallpaper and a second-hand desk. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't even stable at first, but what it was hers. She spent nights researching market trends, understanding how industries shifted, identifying the gaps others ignored. Her idea was bold but simple: create a tech platform that helped small businesses streamline operations, with tools usually reserved for large corporations. While others chased flash, she focused on function. And while her competitors burned money on appearances, she invested in results. At networking events, she played the long game. She didn't chase names, she watched behaviors. She took note of who listened and who only talked. She remembered who dismissed her. And most importantly, she paid attention to what people needed even when they didn't say it out loud. But as her platform began gaining traction, she faced unexpected pushback. A few big names in the space suddenly became very interested in her product. Interested. Emails started coming in, vague offers from people who once ignored her. Then came the shady terms, the pressure to sell early, the sudden legal threats out of nowhere. It was clear someone powerful didn't want her in the game, and yet Elena didn't back down. She was quiet, but she wasn't weak. Not anymore. But the question still lingered: how far would they go to shut her down before the world discovered who she really was? Curious how she navigated those threats. Find out who tried to take her down. Learn what deals she turned down. Or see how she outplayed them all. Elena knew something was off when one of her early investors suddenly backed out without warning. No explanation. Just a short message that said the deal was no longer aligned with company priorities. It stung. But what bothered her more was what followed. Within days, her inbox was flooded with strange offers, lowball acquisition deals, most from firms she'd never even contacted. Some carried the names of major players in the tech industry disguised under shell companies. They acted friendly, supportive even, but their terms were clear: sell now or face what they called market turbulence. It wasn't just pressure, it felt like a warning. At first, she thought she was imagining it, but then her lead developer, Raj, received a surprise job offer, double his salary to walk away. He didn't take it, but it rattled both of them. Then her cloud storage partner suddenly terminated their contract, citing technical violations that made no sense. Elena stayed calm on the outside, but inside she felt the walls closing in. It was clear someone had noticed her traction and didn't want her disrupting their space. The problem was, she didn't know who, and without knowing that, she didn't know who she could trust. Meanwhile, Elena's mother, who had always quietly supported her from afar, noticed the toll it was taking. Late-night calls turned into silence. Elena wasn't sleeping. She was holding the entire operation together while feeling like the floor could fall out from under her at any moment. Her closest friends didn't understand the pressure to them. The startup looked like a success story in the making, but they didn't see the lawsuits quietly brewing in the background, or the competitors buying up her suppliers to squeeze her options. Elena was being boxed in from all sides, but she wasn't alone. Raj had stayed by her side, so did Mia, her operations lead, who'd once worked for one of the very firms that was now circling them. Mia started digging quietly, using old contacts. What she found wasn't good. One of the venture capital firms that initially passed on Elena's startup had invested in a rival company just weeks before the attack started. That rival, it turned out, had nearly identical features that hadn't existed until after Elena's early beta had been pitched. Someone had stolen her ideas, and now they were trying to erase her before she could expose them. What Elena didn't know yet was how deep the betrayal went to her who had helped leak her plans from the inside, but the clock was ticking and she was running out of time. Want to know who betrayed her trust? Uncover the mole in her team. See how she exposed corporate theft. Or watch what she risked to fight back. Elena sat alone in her office, staring at the glowing screen. A spreadsheet filled with numbers flickered in front of her, but her mind wasn't on the data. Her thoughts were spiraling. Someone inside her team had leaked key information, timelines, product features, even investor conversations. And now, the rival startup backed by that aggressive venture firm had just announced a launch date dangerous, like close to hers, with technology eerily similar to the one she had built from scratch. Months of sleepless nights, research, and quiet progress were now on the verge of being stolen out from under her. Raj was frustrated, pacing the room. It doesn't make sense, he muttered. We kept everything locked down, the beta wasn't even public. But Mia had already confirmed it. The rival firm had inside help, and the timing of every attack, every closed door, and every legal scare now pointed to something coordinated. It was no longer paranoia, it was a takedown in motion. Elena's nerves were raw, but her instincts told her the window to act was closing fast. Her competitors were moving to secure exclusivity contracts with major service providers, the same ones she had spent months building relationships with. If those deals went through, her platform would be pushed out of the market before it even launched. She knew the only way to survive now was to go public with the truth. But that meant risking everything: her funding, her reputation, and possibly her entire company. Behind the scenes, she started gathering proof. Mia reached out to a journalist she trusted, one who had a history of exposing corruption in the startup world. Meanwhile, Raj sifted through the old server logs looking for evidence of unauthorized access. What they uncovered was worse than they expected. One of Elena's early advisors, someone who had been like a mentor, had quietly joined the board of her rival company just weeks before the leaks began. Still, Elena kept moving forward. Her team prepared a stripped-down launch, a demo version that could go live in days, not weeks. It wasn't perfect, but it was real and it would prove she was first. But as the launch date drew closer, the pressure escalated. Anonymous emails started arriving, warning her to stop. One morning, a legal notice appeared at her office doorstep, accusing her of IP theft, the very thing she was a victim of. It was clear now, they weren't just trying to copy her, they wanted to bury her. The night before launch, Elena stood by her window, watching the city lights blur through the glass. Her hands trembled slightly, everything was at stake, and she knew whatever happened next, there was no going back. Want to see how it all comes crashing together? Watch the explosive final twist unfold. See who steps in at the last second. Or find out how Elena turns the tables. Just hours before the demo launch, Elena received a call from someone she hadn't heard from in years. Noah Hartley. Once a close friend from her university days, Noah had taken a very different path. While Elena bootstrapped her way through every challenge, Noah had climbed quickly through the venture capital world, now managing deals worth millions. Their last conversation hadn't ended well. He'd once offered to invest in her company, but with strings attached, strings that would have given his firm control. She turned him down, and they hadn't spoken since. Now, out of nowhere, he was calling her calm, almost too calm. "You're playing with fire, Elena," he said, skipping past pleasantries. "I know what you're planning, and so do they." She went silent, heart racing. "You don't have to do this, walk away. With your reputation intact, you're better than this fight." It was clear. He wasn't just warning her, he was involved. Whether directly or through quiet deals, Noah was tied to the people trying to shut her down. But what shook her more was what he said next. "You think this is about your platform. It's not. It's about what your data could become. You're sitting on predictive models more powerful than you realize. That's what they want. Not the product, the algorithm behind it." Elena froze. Her platform had been quietly evolving, analyzing behavioral trends across business systems. She built it to help small businesses operate smarter. But the deeper insights, real-time forecasting, pattern recognition could disrupt more than just software. They could shift entire industries. She hadn't fully grasped how dangerous that made her. Suddenly, the attacks made sense. This wasn't just corporate sabotage, this was about control. Whoever got to the core of her tech first wouldn't just dominate her market. They'd have leverage across multiple sectors. She realized they weren't trying to steal a product, they were trying to own the future. But the real twist came when Mia walked into the room minutes later. Pale and shaken, she'd found another access trail, one that didn't belong to the rival firm. It led back to a security firm contracted by Elena's own hosting provider. Someone had been paid off to install a silent backdoor months ago, before the platform had even gone live. Elena now understood the scale of what she was up against. This wasn't just a competitor, this was a coordinated corporate attack, backed by powerful hands with deep pockets and no shame. And she was the only one standing in their way. Want to see how Elena answers this threat? Watch how she exposes the full conspiracy. See who else turns against her. Or discover the shocking choice she makes next. The next morning, the tension was thick enough to feel in the air. Elena barely slept. Her team gathered before sunrise, bleary-eyed, but ready. Raj sat at the terminal preparing the stripped-down launch, while Mia kept the legal files and backup server protocols open just in case anything went wrong. They had one shot to go live before the rival firm's press conference later that afternoon. If they missed it, they'd lose the upper hand. But if they pulled it off, they'd not only prove who came first, they'd make the truth impossible to ignore. Minutes before launch, Elena handed off a sealed envelope to a courier. Inside were documents, server logs, timestamps, emails, and the proof Mia had found linking the rival company, the advisor, and the compromised hosting provider. The envelope was addressed to the same journalist Mia had contacted earlier, and the story was scheduled to publish exactly 30 minutes after their launch went live. Elena knew there would be backlash, but she also knew silence wasn't an option anymore. As Raj clicked the final button, the platform launched. Clean, sharp, live, in real time, businesses began logging in. Early testers praised its speed, its clarity, and the advanced analytics tools that none of the competitors had. It was working. Then, right on cue, the news article dropped exposing the coordinated sabotage, the intellectual property theft, and the attempted cover-up. Screens across tech offices lit up with the headlines. Elena's name was front and center, not as a victim but as the woman who fought back. But then came the twist no one expected. Just as the story was gaining traction, Elena received a call from her cloud provider's legal team. They had discovered that the backdoor had been added not just by an external agent, but with the approval of someone who held temporary internal access. A name popped up on the audit logs: Raj. Elena's heart dropped. She didn't want to believe it. Raj had been with her since the beginning. He stood by her when investors pulled out, when legal threats came in, when everything felt like it was falling apart. But the logs didn't lie. She confronted him in private, his hands trembled, eyes heavy. "It wasn't supposed to go that far," he said. "They just wanted insight, proof your product worked. I didn't know they'd try to kill it completely." The betrayal hit harder than anything else, but even then, Elena knew what she had to do. She reported it. She let the truth go, unfiltered, because integrity meant more than loyalty. Especially when building something meant to last. Want to see what happens after the storm settles? Watch how Elena rebuilds stronger than before. See who unexpectedly comes to her aid. Or find out what shocking offer she receives next. The fallout was fast, loud, and messy, but it was also the beginning of something stronger. After the public launch and the viral news story, Elena's inbox overflowed. Reporters wanted interviews, business owners flooded the platform. Investors who had once ignored her were now reaching out, asking to talk. But Elena didn't rush into anything. This time, she held the cards and she wasn't about to hand them over lightly. Raj resigned quietly. No drawn-out drama. He left an apology letter on her desk, and Elena read it twice before tucking it into a drawer. Betrayal didn't just disappear with words, but she knew the truth. He hadn't acted out of malice. He'd been scared, manipulated by promises of security in a world that rarely gave second chances to people like them. She didn't excuse what he did, but she chose not to carry the weight of it longer than she needed to. Letting go was part of moving forward. Meanwhile, the rival startup that had tried to destroy her was caught in its own web. Their legal team scrambled to deny everything, but the evidence was too clear. Lawsuits followed. Their lead investor pulled out, and Elena, with quiet strength, stayed focused. She didn't gloat. She didn't sink to their level. She just built the platform. Now called Horizon Core grew fast. What started as a tool for small businesses turned into a movement. Entrepreneurs, especially women and minority founders, began rallying around it, not just for the tech, but for what it represented. Elena had become more than a CEO. She was now a symbol of resilience in the startup world. Proof that grit and vision still meant something. Months later, during a major tech summit, the same kind of event where she was once ignored, Elena took the stage to a standing ovation. She didn't talk about the sabotage or the betrayal or even the success. Instead, she spoke about building from the ground up, about trusting your gut when no one else does, and about the strength in staying true to your mission even when it costs you everything. After her speech, a young woman approached her, nervous and excited. She asked Elena what she would have done differently if she had the chance to start over. Elena smiled, thinking for a moment. Honestly, nothing. She said, every scar, every loss, every moment I wanted to quit, it taught me how to build something real. And that's how the woman who once stood invisible at a networking event became the CEO of her own Fortune 500 company by refusing to let silence define her. And by choosing to lead with clarity, not revenge. Want more stories like Elena's? Subscribe to hear the next inspiring journey. See how others overcame the odds. Or learn how to build something unstoppable.